Alison Bentley. I lead the genetics and breeding work here at NIAB, and my focus is on crop genetic improvement.
And I'm Helen Anne Curry. I'm a senior lecturer in the Department of History and Philosophy of Science at Cambridge, and my specialty is in looking at the history of plant breeding, genetics, agricultural science in the 20th century and beyond.
Right, and I'm Martin Jones, and I'm an archaeologist of food. So I look at very old bits of wheat and other foods in ancient bonfires and places like that. And I also work a bit with genetics and stuff. So thinking about the future, right now, over half of the energy in the human food chain comes down to 3 plants, one of which is behind us, wheat. So are we hooked on wheat? Have we got to be stuck with our wheat drug as we move into the future?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right to ask that question, because we have this amazing crop which has been created into this monster, which is able to feed large sections of the population across large geographical areas, and it is difficult to see, with all of the investment through time in plant breeding and the continual improvement of wheat, how we would replace that. It's really important to recognize that wheat is an essential component of global food security. So it does feed people, and it provides this nutritional package that is the basis of many diets. So it is really difficult for me to see what you would replace it with, or what the other options are.
But I think it's also really important to recognize what you've just said, that one of the reasons that wheat is what it is and that it is productive in the way that it is that we have developed not just research infrastructures that feed into its development, its improvement, its dispersal over many areas, but also the infrastructures kind of agriculturally, the farms, the systems of transport, that we've created different kinds of structures to facilitate its spread in the way that it has spread. And so one thing to think about is, what would it look like to start investing resources in other kinds of crops, to recognize that it's not necessarily inherent to wheat, but that we've created the structures that have let this happen.
Yeah. I think the wheat is a bit like the Model T Ford. At one stage, there was a view that there was a perfect car and everyone should have it, and they should all be black. And I think there are reasons for that, and the reasons why, as you said, Alison, if you've invested a lot in wheat, then capitalise on your investment. My own optimistic sense is, for a number of reasons, we can handle diversity better now. If we want to, let's just say we switch to bring another crop in, it's much more feasible now to work up our knowledge of that crop, even than it was 10 or 15 years ago. So we have the option to handle diversity, and I think the world's needs are diverse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really good point, that we're now at this point in history with the science and research progress that we can kind of take these things which are called orphan crops or wild relatives and really accelerate the knowledge we can gain in each of those as unique crops themselves. So things like spelt and all of these kind of more minor cereals, we can really quickly catalyze understanding and what the contributions of those crops and those species could be to future food security.
Do you think it's as easy to catalyze the markets for those, or the development of chains that will bring them to people, or convince people that they should change their diets or change their habits?
Yeah, well, I think that's a much bigger question. I think Martin has some interesting views on kind of when those dietary changes happened in history, and what we can learn from shifts in choices that people make, because I think that's a kind of really kind of multi-dimensional question.
Yeah, and I think one can see in the past, people are very conservative in the past, just they are in the present. And then you get these flips, and very quickly they're conservative about a new thing. I mean, if one talks to my grandparents about McDonald's, it would seem really exotic, and yet it's almost a traditional food now. The switches can be quick.
And what drives those switches, though? Do we know enough about the drivers of those?
That's such an interesting question, and I think it is entangled with what else is changing in society, and I think the take-home message for that is you can't treat people as just calorie consumers.
Mm-hmm.
People, rightly or wrongly, people have a family context, a social context. They have a political context, very often not of their own making, and they have an environmental context. And I think to address hunger where it exists, you can't do it in isolation of exploring those issues.